Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that explores financial topics for families and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Planners Alliance. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Planners Alliance may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
Welcome to the Money Huddle. My name is Michael Baker, and I'm here with Ross Marinell. Ross?
It's beautiful today. I'm doing awesome. How are you, man?
It's amazing outside. For those of you who don't know, we live in South Carolina, which escaped a good portion of the polar vortex that much of the country was experiencing last week. But it did get down here into like the teens, so it got pretty cold. But today, it is 70 and sunny outside.
It is play outside day, but we're inside working.
It is. We are actually inside in our studio, but we have a nice window so we can look outside and see how gorgeous it is. So what better day than today to come in here and kick off the real work and do some podcasting.
Absolutely glad to be here. And so, all right, so something that's been in the news a lot lately.
Something we've talked about at multiple intervals throughout the last week.
Absolutely. So this documentary on Netflix, the FYRE Festival, has been all over social media network. People have probably checked it out by now. Do you remember
when it was all coming out, when this was all going down?
I vaguely remember the headlines and that this festival kind of.
Yeah, me too. I remember seeing seeing some of the promotions for it, and then I remember like it breaking in the news where this was like not the paradise that everyone thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it didn't turn out the way people had hoped, but man, did they make a good promo video.
They made an amazing promo video, and I think, you know, one of the things that we are starting to see is there's a couple of my takeaways. First of all, this full disclosure, it did not totally interest me. It took me probably 3 to 4 days of just watching it random intervals to try to get through the documentary on Netflix. I didn't sit down and like one take wonder that thing. But I did try to get through it because I wanted to kind of see how the story ended up. And well, a couple of things. One is, you know, how many people are willing to buy into just the idea of something like that? You know, you put enough gloss and veneer on something, and people will pay to go be a part of it because they're afraid of missing out.
Right.
And then on the back end, how many really smart people were footing the bill on just winging a prayer, you know, promises.
Right. Investors getting duped, and it's incredible. You're right. That fear of missing out comes back again, right?
Yeah.
This cool idea. It's a select number of reservations you got to get in, and the price tag people were paying.
It was
That's
insane. Yeah. I mean, you know, that was one of the things when they were, because I never really knew. I mean, obviously, you know, you think, a festival. Well, I mean, you know, they sold a bunch of tickets, you know, for a few $100, maybe a couple of VIP packages. They were selling packages that were like 50, 100. There was one package, I think it was like, you know, maybe $100,000, couple $100,000, and it was like you're on a yacht, like you get your own yacht. I mean, it was legitimately like crazy stuff like that, and people were buying it.
Hey, I'll tell you what, the main takeaway I had was how impactful these like Instagram influencers are.
It's insane.
And their reach is just incredible.
Right. And I mean, basically it's that, you know, that credibility of, hey, I'm going to this thing. Are you going to be there? And then people, you know, I mean, we won't name anybody. But, you know, obviously some of the people that are extremely famous, millions of followers on Instagram and social media platforms, you know, they're getting paid lots and lots of money. And I think one of the outcomes that these people that were litigating against, you know, Billy McFarland and these people that they were trying to sue was they wanted these, you know, folks to have to say, hey, I'm being paid. They wanted to be, you know, disclosing that this was a paid advertisement. Whereas before, you didn't really know.
Right.
You didn't know that they were getting paid like a hefty chunk of money to tweet out or put an Instagram post.
Sums of money for one post or two.
I really just love that water brand. I drink it all the time.
so the FYRE Festival got us fired up to talk about.
Let's talk about the favorite line. Our favorite line. I don't know. It was mine from the whole documentary. It's because I asked you. I said, "How did Ja Rule? How did he not get busted for that?" And I remember that there was that scene in the when they were on the conference call, and they were saying
post,
after it was all said and done, the lawsuits were being filed and the charges were being given in, and they were saying
the word fraud came up.
Fraud, and Ja Rule's like, "Oh, it's not fraud. It's false advertising."
All right, enough on FYRE Festival. People are probably sick of it, but it did kind of spark a little interest. We talk a little bit about in our business, FYRE has a little different meaning. Why don't you kind of break down what that means in our world?
Well, I mean, I understand. First of all, I have to again plead somewhat ignorance because, you have to kind of pick and choose what you let your filter take in, and so my understanding of the FYRE movement is this: FYRE is financially independent or retire early, or financial independence retire early group.
Correct.
And there's somebody that's kind of prompted that movement with a lot of younger folks. I think it's a lot of younger folks.
Right.
That are, the idea is, to basically live as frugally as you possibly can, amassing this large amount of savings, and then basically retiring early and living on that income.
Right.
Is that right?
I think it is a combination of aggressive saving, taking advantage of all your tax deductible vehicles, and
are they using tax deductible vehicles?
Well, it depends who you read and what you follow, but I think it's a combination of managing their tax savings while they're working, but then obviously you've got to filter some money into after tax accounts if you want to be able to withdraw it prematurely. But
59 and a half is not too early. I mean, it is really, but
but the goal is
not the goal
to have a substantial savings rate, an aggressive savings rate, and some of these people are maybe in that 40-50% of their income savings, which look, I think that's incredible. It's a great goal for families to have,
no question,
and a lot of the backbone of it makes a lot of sense, which is don't spend or overspend on things like housing and vehicles and food, which are the three main expenses, right? Which is housing, transportation, and food. And to try and mitigate a lot of those overindulgent expenses. And we've talked about this before, where you don't have to drive an $80,000 car. A $15,000 or $20,000 car will get you from point A to point B just as safely.
Oh yeah, no question.
So some of it is, I think, really well positioned for people who are in a position to save that level of income, to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. So it's certainly something I think is, financial professionals, you encourage people to take advantage of every opportunity they can. So here's something though that I want to pose to you and kind of get your feedback on, and our listeners is in some cases, the ability to retire early, and a lot of these folks are retiring in their 30s,
right?
Maybe 40s. But that the goal is, for a lot of them, is in their 30s to save enough money to retire. Okay. And then if they choose to work and earn some income down the road, then that's fine. But the goal is financial independence, so that you can decide if you want to go back to work or not. Mm-hmm. And from reading a number of these posts, they look educated on withdrawal rates and investment strategies. So there's competence there. But here's the challenge I have with it, is a lot of these folks predicate their retirement budget on the fact that they don't have a much of a healthcare cost at all.
No.
And so think about a family of four.
Well, are these? I mean, I'm really truly somewhat ignorant. Are these people? Do they have families? Because when I hear the whole what this is, I immediately I go right to, this is some millennial nonsense. Like millennials, I don't want to work. I don't want to be a slave to the corporate giants. So I am going to save all my money as fast as I possibly can, and I'm going to live on $30,000,
So some of them, so obviously some people have families and they're managing an annual budget of $40,000.
Okay.
And so if they're managing their housing, their home's paid off, have a modest home, then you can get there.
Okay.
The question is this.
I can't even fathom, but okay.
If you don't qualify for an Affordable Care Act subsidy, the health insurance premiums, we know, if you're paying for health insurance on your own,
right,
you know what that cost is.
It's ridiculous.
And my feeling is, how are we good with someone who has saved $1 to $2 million by the time they're in their 30s,
right,
getting a substantial healthcare subsidy because they can manage their income to be under the threshold where they can qualify for subsidy?
Well, I think I would answer that a couple different ways. First is, at face value, it just feels wrong. It's like, wait a minute, the whole point of the ACA subsidy was to help people that didn't make enough money,
who truly
needed they needed the help, to help subsidize that cost. But like anything, right? We know, we work within the tax code all the time, so we know, hey, if there's a rule that can be exploited, human nature is if it's legal, like tax avoidance is legal, right? Tax evasion is what's illegal, but avoidance is so. That's how I look at it. Is that the other thing I look at is where I come down on it is like, look, the whole point is not for you to not ever work again and just live off government subsidies. I mean, that to me is like not what the system's for. It's like, it's to help people that really need the help. But if you could go work and earn money and pay your way, or pay more than a completely free subsidized plan, that was the intent.
Can I put some context around this?
Go for it, man.
All right, because
I know you're holding back on me. I know you're more passionate than you're really showing right now.
I'm not gonna lie, my feathers were ruffled going through some of these because,
folks, let's not get it twisted. This boy was worked up.
He was
worked up about this,
and I think it's cool that people can save. Like, that's what I don't want to knock the movement.
Right.
I think if you have a strong job, you can save $1 or $2 million in your 30s.
Right.
More power to you. I think that's pretty awesome.
Right.
But at the same time, I also don't know that it's fair or in the spirit of our healthcare system for someone who has a $1 or $2 or $3 million net worth to essentially get free healthcare.
Right.
There's a cost associated with that. So let me just give you a little breakdown.
Okay.
All right.
Break it down.
So the first scenario I took a family of 4. So 2 adults in their 40s,
okay,
2 children below age 10. And I said if they had a $250,000 adjusted gross income, because obviously if you're going to save $1 to $2 million by your 30s, you're probably making a pretty substantial amount of income. So this is what came back. So I selected this is a Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina plan, Blue Essentials Silver 14, just to be clear.
And this is right off the website.
ACA. Yep,
right off
the government website.
Okay.
The estimated monthly premium was $2,044. $2,044 per month.
No subsidy.
No subsidy.
What was the deductible?
The family total deductible was $13,300, and the total out of pocket maximum. So individual was $7,150. Family was $14,300. So you're basically paying about $24,000 a year in premium.
Oh, man.
And you have a maximum out of pocket beyond that of $14,300.
Jeez.
You with me so far?
So far.
Okay.
Sounds painful.
I kept the same family dynamics.
Right.
And I just changed the income to $50,000.
Okay.
Okay, which, remember, if we're going to try and FIRE and retire early, financially independent,
sure,
the goal is to try and manage your expenses some, right? You still want to have fun. But basically, you want to cut out a lot of the unnecessary costs and try and keep your income.
Cut out the kids because kids are freaking expensive. I'm teasing. I'm totally teasing.
All right, so I went back and I reran it for a $50,000 income.
Okay.
Now, the estimated monthly premium on this policy was $1,316.
Okay.
But the estimated monthly out of pocket, because because you do qualify for a subsidy,
Uh-huh.
ended up being $264 a month.
So the premium was $200 a month?
Basically, if you qualify for that subsidy,
Uh-huh.
if you kept your income at $50,000, your estimated monthly premium would be $264.42. Now, I'm telling you this because I don't know if a lot of folks know that it doesn't really matter what your net worth is. The system is really
all income based.
It's all income based. So modified adjusted gross income is what the subsidy is based on. So if you're savvy, if you're willing to play the game, you can amass a $1 to $2 to $3 million net worth.
Right.
And if you keep your income at those thresholds, you can get a pretty sizable subsidy.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Just think, if you did that at age 40, for example,
Mm-hmm.
well, you got 25 years till you sign up for Medicare.
Right.
So in theory, you could get 25 years worth of the subsidies over,
as long as they
$1,000
keep
a
the
month.
subsidy. That's where I think there's a big risk for these folks is, there's people in the office right now that aren't fans of this ACA bill, and that's one of the big disconnects right now in our country is well, what are we going to do if we don't have this, right?
Right.
But I mean, just like anything else, I mean, it's a government given benefit. The government gives it. The government could take it away. I mean, you could have people that have said, "Hey, I'm going to set everything up just so I can qualify for this subsidy," and then all of a sudden, subsidy overnight, does not exist next year, and here you go. Your health care plan is now going to be, instead of $200 a month, it's going to be $1,300 a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that would make you take a deep breath, I would think.
Well, think about these folks that are able to successfully manage a annual budget of $40,000 or $50,000 for their family. All power to them. It's
Right.
wonderful. But a lot of that, again, is predicated on the fact that there's a substantial healthcare subsidy that's probably being earned. And
Right.
I'm just saying, like, how do we feel about that?
Well,
Are we okay with a $2 or $3 million net worth, person
so here
managing that income?
Here's kind of my take on it. So I look at it like this: like let's use this dynamic that you're talking about, because I mean we all have opinions, and this is mine. Let's say you have this young couple that they're well educated or whatever. They've invented something. They've made it. They have where they make a ton of money, and obviously they're right to the front of the top of the tax code, with a strong income, and then they start a family, and they're like, look, man, while our kids are young, we've been able to save a ton of money. Why don't we take a couple years off and throttle back while our kids are little, enjoy the time with them, maybe do some part-time work, do some things to kind of keep the bills paid, and use our savings and qualify for this subsidy, and kind of just go about it that way. You know what? I'm cool with that. I mean, I am, because I don't think their intent would be to do that forever. It's like, hey, well, our kids are little, but then you know what? Kids go to school, they start school, and then you're like, well, it's time for me to go back to work because the kids aren't home all day. But where I struggle with it is where I see kind of the idea abused, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna do my best like dude voice, but hey, I'm gonna save this money, and then once I'm just gonna live on dividends and interest, and I'm never gonna work again, man. And I think that's the idea that I don't like, because I'm like, hey, man, you could if you can go out and work and you're able-bodied, I think you should. Now, maybe you do this to try to find something you're passionate about. Maybe you're passionate about, selling your art on the street in Venice, California. Okay. But you can't make but maybe $10,000 a year doing that. So maybe you need to spend a few years saving. So then you can go sell your art for a year or two on the beach. I mean, I'm cool with that, but I think where the problem is, and I think where you're coming from, is we have created a system that's incentivizing people to just be freeloaders, so to speak.
There are going to be circumstances where somebody needs that subsidy. Legitimately.
Correct.
They need it.
And that's who it's for.
And that's what it's for.
And that's how it was sold to everybody.
And that's how it should be followed through on too. Is there are it wasn't that long ago that we had a conversation about unplanned retirement.
Right.
So folks that legitimately want to work 3 or 4 more years, but for whatever reason, a health reason or a job change, they have to retire.
Life happened.
Yeah. The Affordable Care Act is a wonderful outlet for them because they know they will qualify for something.
Sure.
Right? You cannot be disqualified. So they will have health care. And there is enormous benefit to people knowing that.
Correct.
And if they qualify for health care subsidies because they literally have lost their job, then they will have the support to get through to Medicare. I think that's a prime example of how the healthcare system can work correctly. And then on the flip side, I think about people who are able to work that have the potential to earn an income, but just choose not to. And that's their choice. I don't fringe on, I think everybody should have an opportunity to live the life they want, right? And do what they want. And if you're able to save that level of income and you can retire, I think that's great. But at the same time, I think you're dependent on a government subsidy,
right?
That the cost comes out of the system.
So I think that's really the point. It's like, it's not that a subsidy exists. It's that how it can be abused, and then the government. How's the government get its money? It either taxes people or it borrows it. There's 2 ways, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, for me as a taxpayer, I pay taxes, so I'm like, I'm not really cool with that way. And it's, again, I think it's, one of those things where it goes back to, if you go back to the very beginning of that legislative process, the way that the ACA was pushed through, it was kind of hammered through Christmas Eve, straight down the line vote. But it was so rushed that a lot of these gaps and these holes in the legislation, things, because it wasn't really a bipartisan effort, they took what they could get, rammed it through. And I think that's why it's like now you're seeing like, oh, well, people figure things out. And I think that to me is the bigger story.
Right.
It's like
so
the more the government tries to like push people into a corner, the more people are like, nope, I'll figure that out.
Here's the counter argument, right? Well, look at Amazon. They're about ready to get a massive subsidy from the state of New York. Well, should they take that? This is one of the largest corporations in our country. I get it, right? It's not. This happens everywhere, and I guess the point is, what do we want it to like? How do we want to use these programs? Is that they're not breaking the law? They're managing their income. They're being savvy about it.
But here's what's crazy. So that subsidy, right? If you go over what you're allowed, to qualify, you have to pay the whole thing back.
That's right.
It's nasty.
Yeah. So if you mismanage it.
So if you're listening and you do qualify for a subsidy, don't go inheriting money or or anything like that. There's some estate planning stuff in there for all your family. Like, hey, don't leave me an IRA this year.
True. On that note, you have to be very careful about what type of investments you're using. If there is
capital gains.
Capital gains distributions. If there's, if you're on a mutual fund that pushes out capital gains and you didn't even have to sell any positions, that's obviously a risk for those people trying to reach the subsidies. Look, I know there's a lot about that financially independent, retire early that I like and support. A lot of good savings philosophies to follow. It's just like, at what point do we just say, hey, look?
I think where they get it is, as that philosophy or that mindset, I don't want to judge it by its abuse. And I think that's what we see a lot of. I think the idea behind it, my take on it, if you were just to kind of explain it to me, what I would hope that it was like, hey, look, there's a lot of people that work in corporate jobs that aren't happy. They're not fulfilled with what they do, but they make a lot of money and they struggle with, well, gosh, I really shouldn't feel the way I feel because I'm very fortunate. I have this great job. I make a lot of money. I have good benefits. And, I think some people are just like, nope, that's not for me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save half of my income for the next, period of years. And then I'm going to retire and do something that I really want to do, but I can't come close to making the income. And I'm going to use my savings to supplement. So I think of that financially independent, like, hey, I'm not in the corporate, wheel anymore on the treadmill, and I'm doing something that I want to do. I think the idea of I'm going to save all this money so I don't ever have to work again, and you're 30 years old or 40 years old, to me, I think that's kind of foolish. Well, that's my take on it,
And maybe,
but I come from a working family, so
it's hard for me to wrap my head around it.
Southern working family man.
I know. I'm with you. I'm torn about it too. It's not something that I could probably do very easily. Now, look, I would have no problem finding things to occupy my time. Like there's hobbies I could do, and look, I don't begrudge the people that are able to do it. It's just or
take a couple years off. Take a couple years off and travel and do some cool stuff, and then come back and like go grind it out for another couple years. To me, I look at it like this: if you can save, if you can save $1 million to $2 million by your mid-30s, early 40s, you're a champion saver. Like, why would you cut that off? Like, why would you want to cut that down? The only thing it sounds to me is like you're really grinding your gears to try to save that money.
Right, and I'm sure everybody's circumstances that have pushed them in there are different, and there's motivating factors,
no doubt,
along whatever's still left on their bucket list to do. And so it's wild. It's out there. It's worth reading some of those blogs just to grab the little good nuggets that are out there. That's the FIRE movement. So go out there, check out some of those people. Give us some feedback. I'm curious to know if anybody's out there doing it.
Yeah, if you're out there and you're actually doing this, if you're part of the FIRE movement, drop us an email and let us know what's going on. We'd love to chat with you, hear about what your plans are, and see how it's going for you. As always, thanks for tuning in, listening to us. This is the Money Huddle. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you next time.